Hello, and welcome back to the Common Room. It's been a while since we've had one of these.
My first non-alcoholic Guinness. Cheers.
Yay!
I have that exact poster. The picture you have on yours, Andrew. I have the poster of that.
Guinness for strength.
I'm just drinking a Celsius in here.
And yeah, it actually tastes pretty much like Guinness.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Guinness.
lovely.
Okay, so I've been more or less doing no alcohol. I've started to do these zero non-alcoholic beers, and Guinness Zero is very good. It's authentic to the taste of Guinness, in my opinion, like pretty dang closely. I had a couple others, like I have a Blue Moon Zero more or less, and some other IPA from Sierra Nevada. They do not taste remotely like the other. They're just not good. I don't know if it's hops is hard to recreate, and because Guinness isn't a hoppy beer, it's a lot easier of a thing for them to do that. But it's just not good.
Andrew, you're still very blurry. I don't think that
There
was
we
a
go.
non-alcoholic Guinness. There you go. Now you're back.
There it is, yeah. Well, I had 3 shots of scotch before, so it's just me that's blurry. No, I'm kidding. I did not.
Well,
Beautiful.
we've got an agenda for today, but any life updates that people want to jump in with before we get going on today's document?
Yeah, I got a couple things.
Recording.
Yeah, I know we just recorded a week ago, but so on Sunday, June 16th, we will begin. My church has a rector's hour, adult education hour on Sundays, live on YouTube at churchofthemessiah.com. Called Diving Deeper. And for the last year and a half or so, I have first gone through Screw Tape, and then we just finished Mere Christianity. And so on Sunday, we'll do kind of an outro of Mere Christianity and an intro to the Great Divorce. And then Sunday, the 23rd of June, we'll dive into chapter 1 of Reading the Great Divorce. And that'll probably take me through my time at Church of the Messiah. I'll be there for no more than one more year. So yeah, Diving Deeper starts with Great Divorce. Also, I just got an email this morning from the dean at the Virginia Theological Seminary. That conference we did on C.S. Lewis, still speaking, Lewis as the theologian for the third millennium. We've got almost all the papers together. We've got our book proposal going. And so we should have a newly minted book at some point in the next year or so of 7 brand new essays on C.S. Lewis as a theologian from a wide-ranging number of folks.
You're going to finish a book.
I know. Let's give it a rest and don't hold your breath.
This is the news here.
Give it a rest and don't hold your breath.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
It's the tortoise and the hare with between you and Kristen.
Yeah, absolutely. So
That is got to be the most. I was in the Bahamas with Mary Margaret, and she was like, "This must be the most greatest bait and switch ever." We saw sea turtles, and these things zip like 30 miles per hour in the water. Mm-hmm. And she was just in shock, did not realize turtles are some of the fastest things. But they have the reputation as they're always so slow. But in the water, like,
yeah. Finding Nemo lied to her.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Great. What about you guys? What's up?
We just released the next version of our company's software. It's like a separate website for event professionals. So deployed that yesterday, which was a little terrifying, considering like basically everyone else was out sick, so it was just me doing the deployment. And needless to say, we found a bug just before we hit the big go live button. So I am very, very tired. I've consumed an awful lot of caffeine. It should be fun.
I am gonna have to talk with you offline, David, because I'm actually working on building like a software as a service type thing. And I've been doing it all in like in development environment. I've been just using Flask to kind of play around with this and get it all up and running. But I've got to have a conversation of what it's like to take something non-production and make it production, which is very different. Obviously, that's another part to it, where everything that I do is always on a local machine and used for myself. And anyways, we'll have to circle back right after this common room.
That's great. I have a little flex. The Faculty Book Club at Virginia Theological Seminary in, what was it? March of 1957 read "Till We Have Faces." And so this is an original typed page of some notes from that. And my friend James Leake, a book collector, found it in an old copy of "Till We Have Faces" and gave it to me. So apropos.
I love it. I love it. I meant to say I'm drinking some coffee from Paul Aldo.
Okay.
This is. Has yours arrived, Andrew?
No.
Okay, he has sent you some as well. It's
cheers. Thank you, Paul.
Because he's just outside of San Antonio, so he sent you some of that HEB coffee blend that you like so much.
Oh, lovely. My San Antonio blend. Thank you so much, Paul.
Hey, I will
Cinnamon.
say, guys, Mary Margaret got the cookies in the basket, and her mom is coincidentally in town here, and her sister. So they all three had it. We were just at breakfast this morning.
Lovely.
And they said they were, 1, just so cool, 2, incredibly delicious, and 3, we need to get the information because maybe using them for a gift at our wedding, making our own.
There you go.
I really like this idea, like creating our own little logo for the wedding and ordering some of those.
I've got an idea for the logo for your wedding. You can call it "Further Up and Further In." Save on the design. My parishioner Mary Kay Predmore, who we toasted last time, got her cookies, and she was afraid to eat the one with the Lewis with the glass, or one of them she was afraid to eat. And thank you, Kristen sends thanks. She's actually on a restricted diet, has had some health things, and is not doing grains right now. So I may distribute those lovely cookies to appropriate homes as well.
See, I actually specifically sent them to her to help her get better.
Okay. All right. Well, the thought absolutely has been helping. She's making good progress. So,
well, with that, let's pivot and talk about Matt's upcoming nuptials and his life with Mary Margaret. So, for the last 2 newsletters, I have put out a call for marriage advice for Matt, and we have now collated it, and I thought we could talk about it today.
This first one's hilarious.
Well, yeah, let's pick up. I generally group them by a rough theme, and so the first one I called "Nurturing the Flame."
Yep.
And this one said, "Congrats, Matt. My advice after 7 years of marriage is to keep date night a regular thing, regardless of what season and stage of life you two are in. Whether no kids or lots of them, keep a second Sabbath, so to speak, for the two of you." And I'm interested to hear what you think about this, Andrew. I say I would agree, but I would also say keep the definition of date very flexible, and I would also add, particularly if you have children.
Yeah, and I don't know about the children part, but I think that that one of the things that does get lost in the busyness of it all is the idea that the primary relationship in your life, apart from your relationship with God, is your wife, and that needs nurturing. And that needs time and attention. The wonderful band Over the Rhine, whose first album was incidentally called "Till We Have Faces," and had a song on their second album called "Jaxie." They were all fairly profound Lewis fans. The couple who makes up the band, Linford and Karen Detweiler, kind of confused their work life with their relational life, and almost got to the point where somebody was packing up a suitcase. And they wrote about it in Christianity Today a number of years ago, about how they really stepped back from the road, stepped back from their work, and needed to be very deliberate about nurturing that thing that is the foundation of it all. And so for them, they wrote an album called Drunkard's Prayer, which is lovely. And they would every night, because there was a lot of tension and a lot of issues that had gone unspoken, every night would put a bottle of wine on the table, and they wouldn't get up from the table until they had talked through the bottle. So
love it.
But yeah, the business isn't going to take care of itself. The family isn't going to take care of itself until the foundation of that relationship, out of which the children grow, because that relationship is what Jesus says, or Paul says, love your wives as Christ loved the church. So marriage is the closest relation that we get to our relationship with God.
Well, what I thought was interesting with that, we're doing pre-Cana right now. We have a lovely priest. He's about our age. And we're going through Genesis 1, 2, and 3 is what we've done so far. And the last time he did a whole conversation, and JP2 wrote extensively the theology of body law and his a bunch on the marriage on like Genesis 2, is it 24 or 27, like the very end of Genesis 2, where it's like the two left their families, cleaved together, became one, and were naked and not ashamed. And there's like, first of all, I'd never really understood the profoundness of the first two chapters build to that pinnacleness. Like the marriage unit is like the pinnacle of creation, the family. And then chapter 3 begins with Satan entering in, and the first thing he attacks is that union.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but yet I don't know why no one's ever explained that to me that beautifully on Genesis 2 and 3. Because honestly, you just attribute Genesis to like, it's just a fluffy creation story that's not scientifically true. And so you just kind of think that way. I know Augustine's once said like it's really meant to be about like the exposition of the human condition and stuff. But anyways, I just thought that was so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and once he gets in there, the first thing that Adam reacts, this was just in the lectionary last week, it was that woman that you put here with me. And so that's a horizontal relationship ruptured, not flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones from three minutes before, but that woman that you put here with me. So blaming God and blaming her, you know, and when she was tempted, he was there. She gave to her husband who was going on being with her. And so yeah, really, really tending to that. It's an ongoing challenge, but it's one that'll I think bring a good harvest.
I'll also add that in the creation narrative, things get better and better as time goes on, and the pinnacle of creation is not man but woman, since she is the one that comes last, and that's the first place that Satan goes.
Amen. I'll drink to that.
I like that. Mary Margaret's gonna love that. I got to confirm, David, are you going to read the last sentence of this one? Because that's the best.
Oh, yeah. The comment ended on this one. Also, you're always wrong, regardless if you think you're right. As a fellow man, I know for a fact you're probably mostly right.
Wow.
It's a good thing
I didn't read that for a reason, because I think it's terrible advice, certainly to articulate it.
I'm just kind of dying. No one will know who they are.
Yeah. I like the last bit in this section. Let your spouse be your best friend. I would say yes, asterisk. I think that the coda is share everything, and that's certainly true. That kind of openness is, what does Lewis say? People would have naked bodies, God would have naked souls, right? The nakedness is a metaphor for kind of this closeness. And your spouse is going to be your eros partner. How much she is your friend, shoulder to shoulder, your philia friend, really depends on a couple of things. And one is, I have some things that I share with my friends that my wife isn't involved with. She's not a pipe smoker or whatever. And that's okay. It's all right for me to have my friendships that are not around her. But at the same time, we have similar interests that we love to indulge, like bookstores or other things like that. And we have developed things to share. And so developing a shared interest shoulder to shoulder, it won't feel very romantic, but it'll add the philia love to the eros love, which you already have.
I would say that that's driven by how much of your life you invite your wife into. So in the nerdiest possible way, my wife actually now has a pretty good understanding of my job and its various processes and how everything works. Because when she asked me how my day was, I actually now give her a little bit more detail than I ever used to, because it's like, you're probably not interested. But part of married life is to share the everything. So she understands what it means when someone turned down my pool request.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and my wife is so gifted in so many of the areas. Sometimes our trouble when we speak together is we've got too many ideas, and she's got a ton of things that she can do, as do I. I have, in order to kind of, honor some of those boundaries, I don't share sermons with her before I preach them. I write those on my own, and I let that be part of my my time with the Lord. I used to, because she's brilliant and she knows the Bible, and she's, really gifted. But what I found is that it's better for our marriage if I'm not looking for her to help me preach. And it's just, and for her to be able to come to service and hear a sermon, not having seen the sausage being made has been helpful. So there are some things that that I hold as my own.
The next section I entitled "You Before Me," and here one of the pieces of advice was make life about her, not you. Same advice for her. Make it about you, not herself. Self is the enemy. And it's worked for us for 45 years. I would say if I had to sum up my marriage advice, Marie and I had something very similar that we would say to each other in the run up to marriage. It's like, my job is to look after you. Your job is to look after me. If we do that, everything's going to be great.
Right.
And somebody else said a very similar piece of advice and said effectively, it's better than if you actually even try and look after yourself, because you have someone external to you who can actually probably see you a little bit more clearly than you can see yourself.
Yeah.
Related to that, it was, I was listening to Jordan Peterson, and it was just more of a conversation. It wasn't one that he had scripted out. He was being interviewed, and he really discussed like arguments in marriage. And sometimes, so it's kind of related to this a little bit, but it made me think of it. Sometimes in marriage, one person is just better at arguing. It doesn't actually mean they're more right. They just have more of that ability, and almost like a proclivity to be okay with conflict, or they can just articulate a little bit better. Or a better memory of all the things you've done wrong. But his whole point was, he goes, you guys are a unit. When you win an argument, you're not winning. Yes. You have just beat down a person across from you who now you have to live and spend the rest of your life with. How is that a win? That's not a win. You should, if you particularly are the person that is better at arguing, your thought should be, I want to actually help her get, or vice versa, your spouse, help them get their side out to you, so you can understand it as like a team, as a unit. Like, tell me, what are you thinking? I really want to know and understand it deeply, rather than trying to win an argument. And I know that's kind of simple in a narrow thing, but it's like, how many people don't just look at it? Maybe the bigger picture here is, we're one, two became one. Why would I want to? I'm hurting myself when I'm trying to win this argument.
Right. And one of the things, it's a cliche, but it's not, it's a helpful one. They say, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
A priest said to me once, would you rather be right or would you rather be free? Both kind of work, but I like that one.
I know sometimes when Kristen and I have arguments, if I've been building up something and it's been bothering me, I'm an internal processor or an external processor. And so the moment I say it, things get better. But she's an internal processor. So if I say something that's hurtful or that, demonstrates a thing that she did that bothered me, she's going to stew on that for a while. And it took me a while to go, oh, well, I just got all this out. We had this fight and now I feel better. She doesn't start feeling better until long after to process it. And so when we've had some of those conversations, I'm now going, okay, I'm not going to just dump everything, because I know that that's going to hurt for a while. It's going to take some adjustment. And I didn't know that until months and months and even years of kind of experience at doing that. And so the kinds of processors, and that leads us to communication, which I think is a great helpful topic.
Well, and right before that, I will say, leading us to, when we learned each other's Myers-Briggs, we helped understand our conversation. She's an INFJ, I'm an INTJ. And so there's a little bit of differences there of how she experiences things versus how I do. That F and T actually drastically makes a difference in some senses.
Oh, sure.
And so it was like very helpful, just understanding things.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong there. It's just like, this is a statement of fact, how this person receives it versus how you do.
So Kristen's an INTJ as well, and I'm an ENFP.
All the best are, Andrew.
No, they're not. Voldemort and Palpatine are INTJs. So do whatever you need
to the highest, but they can fall to the lowest, because it's just such a rare gift.
You can rule the galaxy one moment and be thrown down a shaft the next.
Yeah, I hear Voldemort was it, and I'm like, well, that's it going bad, but that sounds pretty good.
He got things done.
To become that.
He did get things done. For those of you who are not familiar with with Myers-Briggs, the F and the T, are you more of a thinker or more of a feeler? And so Kristen's an INTJ, I'm an ENFP. And so in order to find out what she was feeling, she says, I have emotions, I just don't use them to make my decisions. And so she'll think through things before she'll feel through things. And sometimes I have to go a ways to kind of get her into the room where it's like, how do you feel about that? And she doesn't know. It takes her a while to maybe figure out sometimes. I feel things and maybe am not as thoughtful about them. And so if I want to know what she's doing, I ask her what she's thinking. And if she wants to know what's going on with me, she asks me how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that took us 6 months to a year to figure out.
Well, and it's important to recognize, you know, Mary Margaret and I have had this conversation before of just like, there can be a temptation in life to assume feelings are bad. And so the rational thought is the way you have to approach something. But feeling like, you're a very smart, intuitive person, Andrew, and obviously you're very wise and you've got a lot of experience. So when you feel a certain way, you place a lot of weight on it because there's a reason
thoughtfully.
You're feeling that. Yeah, there's a reason you're feeling that way. It's not just some negative emotion flaring up. Now, it might take some time for you to put like the thought to why you're feeling that way, because the initial thing is a feeling. But the feeling is like a super valid feeling, most likely. Now, sometimes it might not be in your process. You're like, well, this was just an irrational emotional feeling. But many times it's probably very justified, and it just leads with that. So her and I've had that conversation too about that, just the differences there.
Yeah. They say in recovery, feelings aren't facts. They also say they're also not instructions, but they're valid and they're there, and being able to find a language for that. Jump in here, David.
I was just going to say that Mary Margaret and I have the same Myers-Briggs, so I'm going to consider that a real honor, Matt.
You're an F?
Mm-hmm. I'm just a very well-trained British F.
Yes.
I mean, I believe you. Well, I would never have guessed it, but I believe you.
Well, let's jump into some of the other...
No, I'm sorry. I just got to process. I mean, like, shocking all. David's an INFJ.
Okay. Hey, yeah. Internally process that later when we're done with the common room.
Yeah, you're right. All right, I will.
So some other pieces of communication advice. This is an interesting one. When your wife wants to talk, when your wife wants to talk, she wants you to listen. If she wants you to give her advice or fix a problem, she will ask you for that. I'm gonna qualify that a little bit more. I think that's true for a lot of marriages, but not all. I would say Marie and I, we don't operate like that at all. We've because of our more troublesome dating, we have a very clear protocol in terms of, actually asking and saying what we actually need.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of male friends who they will literally say when they're after hearing their wife talk about something or complain about something, it's like, are you looking for me to listen here, or do you want me to give some suggestions?
And that's a great question. Kristen and I will both preface, hey, I'm just brainstorming here. I don't want you to jump in. And almost all the truisms about men and women are flipped with me and Kristen. And so, the first time I started brainstorming about a plenary talk for Oxbridge, she started jumping into it, and I was just processing it. And I didn't want her to comment and criticize. And she knows a lot of Lewis, and she knows a bunch of scripture and theology and ministry. And so a lot of times I don't want that advice. It's part of why I don't, read my sermons in advance. I want the kind of support for her. But I wish I had known earlier to identify that and say, hey, what kind of response are you looking for? And you can think about that. Oftentimes when I ask Kristen a direct question, she can't answer right away. And so I'm like, hey, at some point in the next hour or two, I would love to know, kind of what you're thinking about that. It's just learning how, and, the Myers-Briggs and the protocols and all the rest are really good. But just I think the first points here, loving your wife, putting her first, you'll kind of learn to see what she needs out of some of those things.
No,
one of our listeners said that the good conversation starter is, how would you like to be loved? And this ties into love languages and really everything that we said thus far in terms of just don't assume too much about the other person, even if you've known them for quite a while, because you might be misreading. And sometimes having a very blatantly clear conversation about what it is that you feel you need can be so helpful.
Yes.
I feel very lucky. You go back to the one before this. Maybe it's her being an INFJ, and I have watched a number of videos now on INFJ, INTJ relationships, and INFJs love to be with an INTJ because it helps the INTJ provides a systematic like framework for the feelings that are going on internally. So I've talked to her before. I've asked her kind of that question. I mean, do you ever feel like, because I quickly go to advice problem solving, and probably even more so than just the average guy, cousin INTJ. That's just how my brain works. It's called the architect. I always think that. And she constantly says, no, I love it. Like, that's what I want. So I'm very fortunate there that like the natural proclivity, she actually wants that, which has been helpful, because that would be a problem if not.
Yeah. In terms of the love languages too, couple of things. I like them. I think it's a good framework. One of the things I was just talking with some parishioners about this week. Sometimes our love languages change over time. And there is an incredible difference between my love languages and how I want to be loved, her love languages and how she wants to be loved, and also the love languages that I like to speak. And so the ways that I like to be loved are not necessarily the ways that I like to love people. And so in terms of coordinating the way I like to love, the language I like to use to love, words of affirmation are probably not going to be effective if what she needs is, physical touch or quality time.
Out of curiosity.
Hmm?
How do you like to be loved? Out of curiosity, as a fellow co-host that spends a good bit of my life around you.
Yeah. I think thoughtful gifts, words of affirmation are huge. For men, physical touch is good, always, but I think words of affirmation, and a lot of those things are wired directly back to how we were raised. And so, I want to.
Well, that's good. Yeah. David can do the gift giving on this co-host relationship side, and I can do the words of affirmation.
Okay, great.
The next section that I've got is all about arguments. The first one was kind of interesting. It said, learn your own argument style as a couple. And it was also added, as a start, before digging in, you might want to ask the question, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? We mentioned that already.
Did you write this one, Andrew?
No.
You probably received the survey.
Well, no, it's a truism, and I'm sorry that I trumped the listener who gave that great advice.
No, they're honored to be in a good company.
I'm not sure if I would talk about learning your argument style, but more of talk through your arguments sometimes after you've had them, just to recognize some of your proclivities. It's like, do I tend to be more sensitive than I perhaps should be? Am I more aggressive? Am I more passive and just don't engage? And does the other person find that frustrating? Does one person have a difficulty in choosing a good time and place to have those arguments? I think kind of like a little retro from time to time, particularly in the early days, can be helpful.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The time and place. I really thought about that.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
just as I'm going to sleep is not a good time to bring up something that I did earlier that day.
And then one of the recovery skills that I learned that we've modified is bookending. So in recovery, it's like, hey, if I have to make a difficult phone call, I'm going to bookend it with a phone call to a friend before and a phone call to a friend afterwards, or something pleasant. So Kristen will always say, yeah, let's sit down with a nice cup of tea or something and kind of talk through if we've got a difficult thing, let's find a way to make it pleasant. And let's find a time where I'm not racing out the door or whatever. And so that's good. One of the things that Chris and I did, and this is my number one piece, for the whole thing, and we started this the first day that we met, we decided to keep short accounts. And, it's like, hey, are you just looking for friends or could this be something more? It was that direct the first time we talked, and keeping short accounts, not walking around with, the nonsense in my head until it blows up. That has been invaluable. And the unpleasantness of speaking it at the time is far, far outweighed by most of the rest of the time is not unpleasant. So keeping short accounts, get to that issue quickly. It has been really, really helpful for us.
David, for the sake of...
I was just going to caveat that with sometimes, but if you need to take a walk around the block to cool off of the thing that's got your hackles up, do that first.
Sure.
But yes, I completely agree. The longer that you leave things to fester, the worse they get, them all blown out of proportion.
Well, they say, I think it was the Gottmans that said this, but it's actually very helpful, but you have to define it, to take a step back when emotions are getting hot, but say we're coming back together in 30 minutes. Like, you can't just like walk away from an argument and leave it open-ended. That's not usually very helpful, particularly lets it just stew. But if it's like, hey, we're just getting a little bit heated right now, let's just, I'm going to go for a walk, come back in 30 minutes, and we're going to just continue this. As long as you set and define that return, it's a very good strategy for like, but for time's sake, David, because I want to see a bunch of these other ones too. This last one in the argument section is interesting.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Mark heard his album Secondhand and his song It's Not Your Fault. And he talks about how he gets. I get lonely sometimes, I get wounded sometimes, I get helpless sometimes. And then his last one is, I get angry sometimes, it's not your fault. I let the molehill simmer like Vesuvius and hole up in Pompeii until all hell breaks loose. I mean, it's not your fault. I would love a link to that because it's just great. Yeah, I'll shut up now. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to jump over to this last one here. I think it's like so good. It kind of connects to what I was mentioning earlier. But be slow to speak when receiving criticism or facing difficult conversations. Listen to each other, reiterate what they said, and express empathy.
Yes.
Yeah, I had that once. Margaret and I were having a conversation. Again, for privacy's sake, I'm not going to do anything what it was about, but it was like, she made this one comment of, are you at least hearing me? I was like, oops, I probably have been a little bit too rational, like too systematic, not rational, because that makes it seem like the others. I was just too systematic here.
And what gets said and what gets heard are two different things. And so repeating it back, hey, what I heard you say is, and did I hear that correctly? And if not, would you mind telling me again?
That's a good way to phrase it.
And then Kristen taught me the most important phrase in communication. Oh, honey, that must really suck. She comes with a problem. She comes with a bad experience. Oh God, that sucks for you. Oh man. And just that is enough affirmation, right? So suck before solution.
The next section I put down as intentionality. One person wrote, if you think it will be easy, you're setting yourself up for failure. Nothing worth having is easy. Be intentional with it. Someone else said, keep a proactive mindset to strengthen your marriage every day. And one item that was very Lewisian, some days you will feel very much in love. Some days you won't. Don't worry about that. Feelings change frequently. That is why feelings are not the basis of marriage.
Intentionality is one of my favorite words just in general in life. I'm a firm believer that if you're intentional in your professional life, your personal life, like you can have wonderful outcomes. I mean, intentionality, you got to be careful not to make it sound like control.
Or everything's a project.
Yes.
Right.
I had an ex. It was one of the harshest criticisms I've ever really felt, particularly because I knew it was true. She said, I've been feeling like you're viewing me as just as sort of like a tick box, something that you've got to sort of, maintain and keep like I'm an item on your to-do list. And that's the shadow side of intentionality. When it's like, well, to be a good boyfriend, I have to do this and this and this. And then it just becomes more about the process than the person.
Ooh, David, nice little P&P. It's not about the process, it's about the person. The process can be a means to an end to some degree, but processes can become ends in themselves, and that becomes highly dangerous.
Yeah. Again, and I didn't think that I'd be using so much recovery advice, but recovery is a lot about relationships, especially in the Al-Anon recovery I did. They say progress, not perfection, which I translated to process, not outcome. And so being there in the process, and feelings, yes, like Lewis says, feelings come and go, but the feeling of Eros that you have for her and all the rest of the stuff will turn into a lower, slower, stronger, deeper kind of love. And sometimes what you trade for all of that, fireburst of romance is this idea of keeping a promise to somebody year after year after year after year. That declaration of agape that you make at the altar is that promise that you get to keep throughout all of the changes of feeling and storge and friendship and eros. Yeah.
The third one in this next section is hilarious, but the first one I think is incredibly good. Always give each other the benefit of the doubt and assume that each spouse is doing their best. That, so far, actually, out of all of these, is my favorite. I mean, we're early on, so it's easy for me to do this at this stage, but I want to make sure I do this later in life. I always give Mary Mark, she's just so sweet. I don't think she has a negative, malicious bone in her body. And so I don't believe she ever does. But there's one time when she sent me a text, and I didn't read anything into it. It's like, I'm sorry, I was a little bit this. And it's like, I didn't read that in the slightest, because I've never actually thought she ever could do anything. So yeah, it's just, I've always just assumed the best and never had anything different.
In my experience, those who are sweeter, what we tend to attribute to them isn't so much malice, but apathy, or just being disinterested in something, in us, in something that we care about. That with her sweeter personality, that's, I would say, the mistake that we tend to make when we're trying to analyze someone's actions, and we draw the worst from it.
Yeah. Well,
whereas someone that's more proactive, it's like, no, they are purposely trying to push my buttons. They are purposely trying to put me down, etc.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think too, our natural proclivities, we read about this in Lewis, especially Mere Christianity, with Miss Bates and Dick Firkin, and the action repeated becomes a habit, and the habit repeated becomes a virtue. Our natural proclivities, our natural temperaments are just what they are, but they take real deliberate work to turn those into virtues, right? And so if I'm naturally kind or thoughtful, I have to really turn that I have to just take whatever. I'm usually a positive person. If I get mad or sad, that doesn't really last more than a day or so. But I should take that positivity and then say, okay, God, this is a natural gift that you've given me. Now, how can I disciple that gift to make it of service to you and to others? She's very sweet, but just pure human sweetness isn't going to do something. And there's something behind that sweetness. Why is she so sweet? And what can we do with the giftedness that we have to turn that into a way to love and serve others? That for me is sometimes the challenge, but that's what I think we do with the gifts.
It's the four loves.
Yes.
A garden is naturally fecund, but it still needs the sterile work of the gardener to craft it into something really beautiful.
Yeah.
This third one's quite funny.
Go ahead, read it.
If you think you are safe with her, so you can just be yourself, that doesn't mean you can be an ass.
Right.
You should care as much about your relationship with her as you do with others. If you wouldn't allow yourself to do something hurtful to others, being yourself is not an excuse to do it to your wife.
Right. And that's absolutely true. Although on the other side, the feeling of, hey, I'm just going to be the jerk that I am, and not going out of my way, not being unrepentant, but just one of the things that a marriage partner knows is just how terrible you are. And yet they love you, and they see how terrible you are, and they still love you. They want to change that or help you with that. But just to be able to be, like Lewis says, storge is kind of simple clothes and, undress. It's like, I don't have to put on my party manners. I don't delight in being a jerk, but I don't want to pretend all the time that I'm not. And at the same time, if she's indulging my jerkness, I'm going to be like, okay, she's going to be a jerk too. How can I be really lenient with her because she's really lenient with me? It's not fair to point out her jerkness and then be yourself and just be an ass. So, and not that she has any jerkness.
And that is also covered in the four loves, the about the questions of informality and what that actually really means. Usually, it actually means a far subtler form of formality.
Yeah.
There was also a comment about learning how to do household chores the right way, as in how your wife would like it. I would say that's always a conversation. There's a couple of things in my marriage with Marie. It's like, you do it like that. It's like, you do it like that. And then it pretty much came down to, hey, if I'm doing it, you okay with me doing it my way? And it's like, well, if you're taking one of the chores off my plate, yeah, absolutely. So I think it can be good to occasionally have those conversations as to how exactly one is meant to load the dishwasher, because for some people it can get pretty serious. And you would really think with my personality type I would care more about that stuff, but I thankfully don't. But I think the conversation is worth having. But more importantly, if someone is doing a household chore, don't criticize them.
Yeah. Kristen loaded the dishwasher exactly once. I offered my very helpful opinion about a more efficient way, and she has never loaded the dishwasher again. Actually, occasionally she'll do it, but I do the kitchen stuff. You lost
that one.
No, I won that one because now the dishes come out of the dishwasher exactly the right way every time. And you know what else happens? Laundry magically appears in my drawers. So she's like, great, you do the kitchen, I'll do the laundry. And that has been fine for both of us. Right. And so now she doesn't, load the dishwasher like a rabid raccoon.
That was a Wall Street Journal article back in like 2014, 2015. Sure. I remember on the front page, it leads to a lot of tension in marriage is the dishwasher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
forks
we
up
just
or
figured
forks
that
down?
Out. Yeah. Forks up.
Oh.
No, forks down.
Always down.
Don't want people falling onto it, particularly when you got little ones around.
Beyond that, you don't put them in because if you put them, this just makes pure logical sense. You put them up, you're grabbing them with your fingers as you're putting them into the thing. Why would you touch the tips of these things? If I put them the other way, then I'm
okay. You guys can do my laundry. I'll load your dishwashers as well.
Well, there was some
at Andrew's house now because
I'm just gonna take a little cloth, just clean the ends of them. It's like I know you're taking these out with your fingers.
No, I have not. I grab them on the neck. I won't touch them. I grab them by the neck.
There was some advice that was given to Matt about parenthood.
Speaking of grabbing him by the neck, let's talk about parenting. No, I'm kidding.
It's a little ahead of schedule, but I did like the advice. Don't argue in front of your kids. Always true. I'd also say always present a united front. Yeah. Alexander at the moment is particularly at the age where if he doesn't like the answer that he gets from one of us, he goes to the other. And you got to train yourself to always, has mommy answered this? What did she say? No, daddy agrees with her.
Good. Another thing, too, is if you make a threat, follow through.
Yeah.
Hey, if you do this, I'm taking away the toy. And also don't repeat yourself. I mean, this is flex. But hey, if you keep that up, you're not going to get dessert. And don't say it again and again. Kids are smart. They'll catch it. And then follow through with their actions. They'll know that you mean it.
Yeah, and I've also found the slightly preemptive. It's like, oh, I don't think you should. I don't think you're going to get any books tonight. No. Rather than saying, if you don't do this, then you won't. It's like, no. It's like keep things nicely in the present tense. It has a little bit more effect.
Kids and start, when they're pregnant. I mean, yeah. Oh, sorry, David.
No. It just cut in suddenly. It said when they're pregnant. It's like,
read to them, both of you, and read to them when you're pregnant. They'll know the sound of your voice in the womb. Yeah,
and honestly, it's one of the real great joys of parenthood, being able to read your kids, particularly when they want to read books that you want to read. So Alexander asked to hear The Twits by Roald Dahl this morning, and that made my heart flutter. And also, he's now at the stage where he's wanting to read books about superheroes. So that's also
here's a book you want to get him to read.
Maybe at bedtime. I think that should knock him out.
Hey, that's where Puddleglum shows up.
And one other piece of advice was that kids are capable of doing more chores at a younger age than people realize. I've absolutely found that true. It's always easy to think, oh, well, they couldn't possibly. It's like, even if it's just taking their plate into the kitchen, that's a good habit to start to establish.
Making a game and making a competition of things is also helpful. Even as a high school teacher, my biggest success teaching the Scarlet Letter at a Catholic boys' school was challenging each of my 5 rows. Whichever row can find the most symbolism in this chapter will get, I don't know, whatever nominal thing, and so appealing to their natural sense of play or fun, I think can help with that too.
Well, there you go, Matt. We hope that the listeners have made you a better man and forging a stronger marriage.
And Mary Margaret, if he doesn't follow through, it's not our fault. We have discharged our duty to you, and we're always here to help you guide him back onto the right path.
You guys ruined my chance of like the ignorant card. Like now I can no longer play that, in the Catholic faith, mortal sin. You didn't freely assent. You didn't know what you're doing. Doesn't count. It's like here, now I have no excuse.
You can just play the dumb blonde card. Oh, I didn't remember. So, no.
Well, I want to say thank you to all the listeners, if any of you guys are watching it, for sending that in and taking the time. I really do appreciate that. Kind of just continues to show that we have like this beautiful, lovely community at Pints with Jack.
Absolutely. And a lot, I was delighted to see how many of you out there have had such great and long marriages. Somebody once told me, anytime you got two sinners under one roof, it's just going to be on like Donkey Kong. I mean, to have two sin natures trying to achieve something in a limited space. But God is great and his grace is there. And so here's to all the married couples and the soon to be married couples. And thank you for all your words of wisdom.
Cheers.
Cheers.